A quiet suburban street erupts into chaos as sirens wail in the distance. But one entitled jerk decides his petty grudge is more important than a life hanging in the balance. Brad Hargrove, the self-proclaimed king of the cul-de-sac, parks his gleaming SUV right across the driveway, blocking the ambulance from reaching his elderly neighbor who's just collapsed from a heart attack. What kind of monster does that on purpose? All because of a years-old fence dispute. The afternoon sun beat down on Willow Lane like a relentless hammer, the air thick with the scent of freshly mowed grass and blooming lilacs. But underneath that idyllic facade, tension simmered like a pot about to boil over. Brad, a burly real estate agent in his mid-40s with a perpetual scowl etched into his face, slammed his car door with a resounding thud that echoed through the neighborhood. He huffed, his breath coming in short, angry bursts, as he eyed the house next door, Mrs. Eleanor Thompson's modest bungalow, where the white picket fence he'd always hated leaned slightly askew. Eleanor, a sweet widow in her 70s with silver hair tied in a neat bun and a garden full of vibrant roses, had been Brad's nemesis ever since she refused to let him extend his driveway over her property line. "It's my land, Brad," she'd said calmly during their last heated exchange, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands from arthritis. "But Brad? Oh!" he seethed. "How dare she?" he muttered under his breath, kicking at a loose pebble on the asphalt, the sharp clack amplifying his frustration. Inside her home, Eleanor felt a sudden sharp pain in her chest, like a vice tightening around her heart. She gasped, clutching at her blouse, the fabric damp with sweat. The room spun, the cozy living room with its faded floral curtains and the faint smell of chamomile tea she'd just brewed. "Oh no. Not now," she whispered, her voice weak, trembling. She stumbled toward the phone, fingers fumbling over the buttons to dial 911. "Help. Please," she managed, before collapsing onto the porch steps with a soft thud, her body going limp under the warm rays. Meanwhile, Brad revved his engine unnecessarily loud, a growl that drowned out the distant wail of approaching sirens. He knew exactly what he was doing. Earlier that day, he'd seen Eleanor watering her flowers and felt that familiar surge of resentment. "That old bat thinks she owns the block," he'd grumbled to himself while sipping his overpriced latte. Now, as the ambulance turned the corner, lights flashing like angry fireflies, Brad positioned his SUV diagonally across both driveways, his and hers. "This'll teach her," he thought, a smug grin creeping across his face despite the knot of unease twisting in his gut. The EMTs, a team of 3, lead paramedic Lisa Ramirez, her partner Mike Chen, and rookie Sarah Klein, raced down the street, their vehicle a beacon of urgency. Lisa, with her no-nonsense ponytail and years of saving lives under her belt, leaned on the horn, a piercing blast that cut through the air like a knife. "Move that car. We have a medical emergency," she shouted out the window, her voice laced with controlled panic. Mike, peering through the windshield, spotted Eleanor slumped on the porch, her chest barely rising. "Come on, man. This is life or death," he yelled, his heart pounding in rhythm with the siren. "But Brad?" He stepped out of his SUV, arms crossed over his chest like a fortress, the fabric of his polo shirt stretching taut. "This is private property. You can't just barge in here," he bellowed, his face reddening like a tomato under the sun. The neighbors started peeking out. Mr. Jenkins from across the street paused his lawnmower, the engine's hum fading into silence. Young couple the Parkers froze on their sidewalk. "Baby stroller forgotten." Whispers rippled like wind through leaves. "What's Brad doing? That's insane." Lisa jumped out, her boots hitting the pavement with a determined slap. She approached Brad, gloves already on, the faint metallic tang of adrenaline in her mouth. "Sir, we need access now. Your neighbor is in cardiac arrest, every second counts." Her words hung heavy, punctuated by the beeping monitors from the ambulance. Brad waved her off dismissively. She's faking it. Probably. Always causing drama. Move along, find another way. Faking it? The audacity. Sarah. Wide-eyed in the back. Radioed for police backup. Her voice shaky, we have an obstruction here, possible interference with emergency services. As minutes ticked by, precious. Agonizing minutes, Eleanor's breaths grew shallower. The world around her blurring into a haze of pain and distant sounds. The scent of her roses wafted up, mocking her with their sweetness, while a bird chirped obliviously overhead. Inside the ambulance, Mike prepared the defibrillator. Its low hum a stark contrast to the chaos outside. Why would anyone do this? Sarah muttered, her stomach churning. Twist of fate, little did Brad know. Eleanor wasn't just any neighbor, she was the retired nurse who'd once saved his own mother's life during a community event years ago. But Brad, blinded by entitlement, had forgotten, or chosen to ignore, that detail. The standoff escalated. Brad pulled out his phone, filming the scene with a shaky hand. See this? These EMTs are trespassing. I'll sue, he ranted, his voice cracking with false bravado. Lisa's patience snapped like a twig. Sue us? While a woman dies? What kind of person are you? The air crackled with tension, the sun casting long shadows that seemed to point accusatory fingers at Brad. Neighbors now gathered in a loose circle, phones out, capturing every moment. Mr. Jenkins shouted. Brad. You're out of line. Move the damn car. A collective gasp rose when Eleanor's hand twitched faintly on the porch. A desperate sign of life fading. Finally, police sirens joined the symphony. Two cruisers screeching to a halt. Officer Daniels, a stern veteran with a mustache that twitched in irritation, stepped out. What's the holdup here? He demanded, his boots crunching gravel. Brad puffed up. Officer, they're on my property, but Daniels cut him off. Eyes narrowing. Property? This is a public emergency. Move it or I'll have it towed, and you arrested for obstruction. Brad's face paled, sweat beading on his forehead, the salty sting mixing with his growing dread. Reluctantly, he climbed back in, the engine roaring to life with a defeated sputter. The SUV lurched away, tires squealing in protest. The EMTs rushed to Eleanor, Lisa kneeling first, her hands steady despite the adrenaline rush. Ma'am, can you hear me? No response. They worked frantically, chest compressions thumping rhythmically, the defibrillator charging with a high-pitched whine. Clear. Zap, the jolt echoed like thunder. Eleanor's body arched, then settled. Again. And again. The smell of ozone filled the air, sharp and electric. Neighbors held their breath, the collective silence broken only by a child's distant cry. Miraculously, on the third try, Eleanor's eyes fluttered open, a weak cough escaping her lips. What happened? She rasped, the taste of bile in her mouth. Relief washed over the team like a cool wave. You're going to be okay, Mrs. Thompson, Mike assured, his voice soft, reassuring. They loaded her onto the stretcher, wheels rattling over the uneven driveway, and sped off to the hospital, sirens fading into the distance. But for Brad, the nightmare was just beginning. As the crowd dispersed, whispers turned to glares. Officer Daniels approached, handcuffs glinting in the light. You're under arrest for interfering with emergency personnel. That's a felony. Pal. Brad's smugness shattered like glass. Wait. What? It was just a parking thing, he stammered, his voice rising in pitch. A pathetic whine. Daniels shook his head. Just a parking thing. You nearly killed her. Come on. At the station. Brad sat in a cold interrogation room. The fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry bees. His phone buzzed incessantly, texts from his boss. Firing him on the spot after the video went viral. Entitled "Jerk Blocks Ambulance, Karma Incoming," the headline screamed online. Views skyrocketed. Comments pouring in, "What a scumbag. Hope he rots." The twist hit hard, turns out. Eleanor's son was a prominent lawyer in town. And he wasted no time filing charges. Brad's real estate license? Suspended. His marriage? His wife? Fed up with his antics. Packed her bags that night. The door slamming with finality. Days turned to weeks. Brad's house, once his pride, now felt like a prison. The scent of stale coffee lingered as he paced, sighing deeply. Regret gnawing at him like a persistent ache. How did it come to this? He muttered to empty rooms. Court day arrived. The courtroom air thick with anticipation. Eleanor, recovered but frail, testified from a wheelchair. Her voice steady, "I forgive him. But actions have consequences." The judge's gavel fell with a crack, community service. Fines. And probation. But the real punishment? Isolation. Neighbors shunned him. His social media a ghost town. In a final, bitter irony, Brad suffered a minor heart scare months later. Panicking, he called 911. Chest tight. Breaths shallow. The ambulance arrived swiftly, no blocks this time. As they wheeled him out, he caught sight of Eleanor's roses blooming brighter than ever. Karma's a real thing. Huh, one EMT quipped under his breath. And there you have it. Folks, the story of how one man's entitlement nearly cost a life but ended up costing him everything. Remember, in this crazy world, a little kindness goes a long way. What if we all chose empathy over ego? It might just save us from our own downfall. Justice isn't always swift. But when it hits hard. Stay humble out there.